Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Wednesday, March 26th, 2025, and today we're going to talk about the types of interplanting, increasing predators for cucumber beetles, among other dweebish pests, and windbreaks. So let's do it. All right, lovely Wednesday to you all. I have had one of those weeks that reminds me that farming is rarely anything to do with soil management, planting, or harvesting. Oftentimes it's fixing pipes, replacing a gate, fiddling with the irrigation. It's fixing a door on the high tunnel, or just moving stuff around. The day-to-day, especially before the season really kicks in, can be quite random and diverse. But honestly, it's kind of the randomness and diversity that keeps this job endlessly interesting and challenging. And it's delicious at the end of the day. So speaking of delicious, interplanting, or the act of planting two or more crops together at the same time, is something that I love doing and I love telling people about, but I also really love telling people to be careful with. On the pros side, when done well, interplanting can really make the most out of a small space, increasing the number of crops in and thus the profitability of beds. I often say, sure, I farm less than 1 acre, but produce multiple acres worth of food by planting multiple crops in a bed in a season. And some of those crops I plant together at the same time. Interplant them. However, on the con side, you can easily do all the work required to interplant only to have neither crop do very well. So let's go through some methods of interplanting so you understand that there is indeed a method, or really many methods, to the madness. The first method is using unused space. An example of this is tomatoes. Tomatoes, even after you transplant them, can be 6 to 8 weeks from producing anything. So sowing a radish crop or transplanting some beets or lettuce on either side of the tomato bed can be a great way to utilize that unused space and get a crop while you're waiting on the next crop, which would be the tomatoes. Same goes for peppers. Easy beginner crops for interplanting for sure. Because of that, it just has all this extra space that's not being used. The next method is to utilize different root zones. So for instance, peppers are a deep-rooted crop, meaning that there is room to fit a shallow-rooted crop near them, such as turnips or lettuce or green onions, etc. In fact, I love planting green onions between rows of peppers to maximize that space and those not super competitive root levels called root complementarity. All of these are discussed in more detail in the Living Soil Handbook, obviously, but the idea being that these roots are not going to necessarily compete with one another, and the plants are going to grow better, especially those scallions that'll make the nice tall greens that I talked about last week. Another option, albeit a more advanced option, is something like relay cropping. So plant the next crop into the existing crop. Now, all of these take really good weed management, but perhaps none quite like relay cropping requires that management. And to reiterate, this is not a beginner method. So I will try to give it an example other than what I usually give, which is how I sow like carrots in January in our high tunnel and then plant my tomatoes around April into those carrots when they're coming out. So I'm effectively establishing one crop while the other crop is finishing up, like a relay race. Which I think is how a relay race works. But another example could be something like sowing a bed of radishes, and then after your initial harvest, transplant something like eggplant into the bed since it's likely already covered with insect netting, right, to protect the radishes. Then the next week, harvest the rest of the radishes out of there and let the eggplant have the bed to itself. I don't generally do much companion planting, but one I have obviously mentioned before that I do like is flowers like sweet alyssum planted around tomatoes. I have a tiny tray started right now that will get dispersed all over the garden this spring, but especially around the tomatoes. Then I'll start another tray later on in the season to flower into, going on into the fall. On the more simple side of things, if you're just trying to increase biodiversity, I like splitting beds in half with, say, spinach on one half and then lettuce on the other half, like right down the middle, long ways. Or it could be radishes or turnips or green onions or whatever on that other side. Beets as well. I've done it with a lot of different crops. That is a good way to add a little diversity to the bed, to the soil, while also not making it awkward to plant and or harvest. Sometimes, or all the time, simple is just better. Honestly, I originally had it in mind that I would frame this as the rules of interplanting, but I don't like the idea of rules with interplanting because interplanting is so complex. To simplify it down to do this and don't do that, it's just too complex for that. Like, I don't suggest planting 2 heavy feeders together in general, but not as a rule. With enough space, a couple heavy feeders will be fine together. I mean, obviously with Milpa/Three Sisters style gardening, you're often taking multiple long season heavy feeders, but you're also giving them the amount of space required for all of them to succeed, which can be hard in an intensive garden situation. A big reason for the interplanting is to maximize space because space can be so limited, but that can be hard to do with multiple heavy feeders in the same bed at the same time. They do like and need their space to do well, so if there were rules, it would mostly just be around space and timing, but that will change with the quality of your soil, your climate, how much land you have, all the things. It always comes down to context. Context rules everything around me. Wu-Tang said that. Anyway, thoughts on rules or methods of interplanting? I certainly did not include every option or every method, but I wanted to include the main ones. Otherwise, it's quick break time, and when we come back, let's set the table for the predators who like cucumber beetles. Yeah, BRB.
I'm so confused right now, baby. Didn't work for us, didn't work for us, and I guess it's over now, baby.
Today's episode of Growers Daily is brought to you by Tilth Soil. Tilth Soil is a worker-owned co-op making living soils in Cleveland, Ohio using NOP-compliant food scrap compost. They wrote us, quote, "We're stoked to support Growers Daily because healthier, tastier, and generally more decent food systems start with growers like all of you, inquiring minds who care about the land." End quote. Love the folks over there at Tilth. If you're looking for top-notch compost or potting mix, drop an email to the folks at Tilth via info@tilthsoil.com. That's info@tilthsoil.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by So Right Seeds. So Right Seeds is an heirloom seed company that offers fresh, high-quality, open-pollinated seeds. They have a great selection on their website of over 400 varieties, along with a planter's library with tips for growing. They offer cover crops and bulk packs of seed for sustainable home gardening. The instructions on the back of their packets have all the information you need to get started. Go to So Right Seeds, that's SOW, and use my discount code NOTIL for 15% off your order. That's SoRightSeeds.com. All right, enjoy the show. If you, the listener, are enjoying this content, getting even a small amount of value from it, consider supporting our work over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. I will try to get to questions from everywhere the questions come in, but I will always get to your Patreon questions. Now, today's Patreon question comes from Patreon member Dan Gorman, who writes, quote, "Hey Jesse, thank you for the great content each day and best of luck ramping up into the spring." Thanks, Dan. I know it's technically March or Feb 31st. I wanted to get your thoughts on striped cucumber beetles. I am taking a break from all cucurbits this year due to them, and in reading about pest management came across this. And he links an article called Managing Cucumber Beetles in Organic Farming Systems by William E. Snyder, Department of Entomology, Washington State University, Pullman, which I'll include more in a minute, and I'll add that to the show notes. Anyway, Dan goes on, any advice for welcoming wolf spiders and or other predators into the garden? My context, backyard garden with 6 by 25 foot rows, zone 4B/5A in Wisconsin, wood chip paths plus 3 random mounded triangular beds planted with perennials, native grasses, and flowers to try to attract beneficials, similar to the beetle bank concept. Thanks again. Always appreciate your insights. End quote. All right. I love this question, Dan. Thank you. So that paper Dan mentions notes that cucumber beetles have a few natural enemies, including wolf spiders and ground beetles. I'm going to quote the paper directly here real quick. Quote, "A recent study searched for DNA of a cucumber beetle relative, the western corn rootworm, in the stomachs of predatory insects and spiders. The researchers believed that most of the beetle DNA that they recovered inside predators came from beetle eggs and larvae. This study found an incredible array of different predator species eating the beetles, including harvestmen, daddy longlegs, ground and rove beetles, spiders of several kinds, and predatory mites. So a biodiverse community of predators may be an important biological control of cucumber beetles rather than relying on any single predator species." End quote. So first of all, I love the idea of checking the DNA of the stomachs of predatory insects and just seeing what's going on in there. But anyway, spiders, mites, ground beetles, etc., those are going to be massively helpful. And in fact, some research has shown that just the mere presence of wolf spiders can help with warding off cucumber beetles. So then what do those predators need from us to be happy and take up residence on our farms or in our gardens? That is obviously the question that Dan is getting at here. First, I think obviously get to know and love your spiders. I am a big spider fan, love spiders. So let's talk about what those predators in particular require to thrive. The first thing is that they need, kind of like anything would, abundant food and housing. If you show up to live somewhere and the food supply is spotty and the housing is meh, you're probably going to move on. Same for spiders. On the food side of things, spiders and many other predators need loads of prey on which to feast. And no, just cucumber beetles alone is not enough. They need abundant, reliable, steady prey to be consistently happy. So how do you attract prey? I mean, honestly, Dan, it sounds like you're kind of on the right track with the perennials and native grasses and such, because the answer is really just flowers and flowers and flowers. Insects like flowers and predators like insects. So not only should you have multiple things flowering all season for beneficials to come and pollinate, but for predators to stay fat and happy on them. As for habitat, spiders and the like will often take up residence in and around the foliage of the flowers, as well as in mulches and on shrubs and grasses. Your wood chips should help, and many just kicking in the soil. Wolf spiders are all over the ground here, often hauling around thousands of tiny little baby spiders, which is both cute and also kind of horrifying at the same time. You gotta love spiders. There was also a recent study that demonstrated that a diversity of tree species can improve the quality and diversity of spiders who live in them and help protect from various moths and etc. As for things like ground beetles, having stones and logs around on the ground in the garden where you will not trip on them or mow over them, of course, can help promote a range of ground-dwelling, non-flying beetles to assist you. Same with mulches, compost piles, and leaf piles. Where there is food, the predators will go, and since lots of little things eat up carbonaceous materials like wood or house themselves in rocks, the slightly larger predators will find their way there. Naturally, avoid sprays. Just avoid them. An easy way to think about this is fight pests with life, not death. That is to say, increase the life on your property and you will decrease the undesirable death of your plants. But if you use sprays and insecticides, you haven't solved the problem. You've simply put it off, and you haven't allowed those predators to take up residence because you've killed off some of their food supply. And by and large, that applies to organic insecticides as well, right? Because you're just killing off the pests that the predators need to live on. Anyway, I could go on and on about this because I think it is an incredibly interesting conversation, and there is almost nothing more fun than seeing a spider or a wasp or a ground beetle eating something that usually eats what you like to grow. This will take some time to get in balance, your predators, and really get going, but it's fun to witness. I know I personally get embarrassingly excited for bug season here just to see what new things are arriving or staying put. Oh, and birds. I miss my birds. I can't wait. I just saw a phoebe the other day and I was stoked. I love phoebes. They like kind of float in the air and then dive bomb the bugs on the ground. It's pretty cool. Hoverbirds. Anyway, let me know your thoughts on that. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, windbreaks. Breaks before windbreaks. That's a phrase. Be right back. Today's episode of Growers Daily is brought to you by Harnwah Greenhouses. Harnwah Greenhouses has pioneered controlled environment agriculture since 1965, partnering with market gardeners and farmers across North America to deliver turnkey greenhouse solutions. Their unwavering mission is to support growers' success through innovation and expertise in design, manufacturing, and installation. Harnwah Greenhouses are engineered to withstand high wind and snow loads, providing optimal brightness, increased yields, rapid ROI, and long-lasting durability. With over 20,000 projects completed, they are more than a manufacturer. They are a trusted partner. Their structures foster sustainable, energy-efficient ecosystems that drive profitable, resilient agriculture. In 2025, Harnwah is introducing a new low-tech, high-tunnel model starting at just $2 per square foot, offering open field growers an accessible entry into controlled environment agriculture. Learn more at harnwah.com. That's HARNOIS.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by Farmhand. Newsletters, right? A necessary evil for CSA farmers. Join Farmhand and real CSA farmers on April 11th for a free digital workshop where they'll share strategies they use to turn their newsletters into powerful sales tools. Get the secrets and go-to templates for success when you register for the free workshop today at farmhand.partners/newsletter. That's farmhand.partners/newsletter. And I'll put the link in the show notes. All right, back to the show. All right, so for segment 3, I wanted to talk about windbreaks because clearly, as it is every spring, wind has been on my mind a lot. Also, someone asked me recently, and forgive me, I can't find the comment, but had asked me about windbreaks and some things to consider with them. So let's discuss that because windbreak construction/design is actually quite the art. Because a poorly designed windbreak can not only block the sun, but effectively increase wind speed, which I'm going to guess is not the goal because wind is the worst. First, the evaluation process should start with knowing where the winds come from. Not every area gets the wind from the exact same place. Like you may have prevailing wind that comes from the southwest, kind of like we do, but also cold winds that come just straight out of the north or from the northwest in the winter. That could be considered as well. So for me, what I would want to avoid is just having trees on the west and east side of our property with nothing on the north and the south to block the wind, where I would essentially create a wind tunnel. This is why you often see windbreaks that completely surround a plot, like square or rectangle windbreaks. They not only need to block the wind from the north and the south, but also to not concentrate it. Also, what time of year are the winds the worst? Chances are that you will say the wintertime or early in the spring like it is here, but perhaps not. Some may get their worst winds in the fall when leaves are still on deciduous trees. Here in deciduous forest land, we get our worst winds when there is very few leaves on the trees around us to slow the wind down. So for us, windbreaks on the north side and the south side to the southwest side make the most sense. Also, in terms of design, stopping the wind entirely isn't the goal. You want to slow it down, not stop it. If you can stop the wind, that can result in worse outcomes than if you didn't stop it at all, like if it was just a complete perfect barrier. In the Silvohorticulture book that came out recently from Ben Raskin and Andy Dibben, they write, quote, "A solid barrier makes the wind shoot up and over, creating turbulence and potentially more damage on the other side," end quote. The better approach, as they and others have suggested, is to have a diversity of heights and widths to the windbreak that will simply slow the wind down but not be a complete barrier to it, even or especially at the lower levels. Because we grow in ground, we don't want wind to just zip through or even be concentrated in gaps beneath trees. So some thick shrubs and tall grasses and such can be able to stop the wind from coming underneath of trees and just hammering your garden. Also for height, think about it like for tunnels. For tunnels, you always want to space them at double the height from each other. So in other words, if a tunnel is 15 feet tall, then you want to have 30 feet between them if you can. It's not a necessity. It depends on which way they're facing, but that's like the general rule. That same sort of rule, to a slightly looser extent, could be applied to trees, to windbreaks as well, to prevent overshading, depending on how thick and tall they are, etc. I say use some evergreens, but also the authors of Silvohorticulture note even just bare tree limbs can be helpful at blocking the wind, and a mix might be nice for the diversity and for allowing some wind through, but not all. For our property, we have buildings on the south side with some trees, and then I've been planting more trees on the north side. The east and west don't have much yet, but with our hedges getting more shrubs and trees this season, that should help anyway with the sideways wind, the west to east wind. Anyway, that's the basics, and I hope that was at least a little bit helpful. Let me know your thoughts and approaches towards windbreaks. Otherwise, I'm going to call it a show. Don't forget, we are now officially a 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. Make sure to like and or subscribe and or follow. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music and the team at No Till Growers. Also shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. Pick up a copy of the Living Soil Handbook or the Seed Farmer at no-tillgrowers.com to support our work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/no-tillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, you get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs today to Katie Q. Katie Q's fun. Jocelyn Apps. These are great names. Katie Q and Jocelyn Apps. So Katie Q and Jocelyn Apps are, clearly they go and join the collective that's kind of growing the city, that's becoming kind of a phenomenon out there in Nevada, this ghost town that they bought, and they're kind of, converting it. And one night they're coming back to their cabin from one of the community dance parties, obviously, that you have to have when you're building a new city. And before they get back to their kind of like refurbished cabin / storefront, where all the gold bars were found yesterday, they noticed that the lights are on, and they didn't leave the lights on when they left. But so instead of going in and just trying to figure it out like anybody would in the movies, they actually go back and they get some people to help them. They all kind of come collectively to check it out and see, like, did somebody break into the house? What's going on? And so they unlock the door. Door was locked. They unlock the door. They go in. They search the house. Nobody's there. But they noticed that the floorboards are all broken up. So all the floorboards where the gold had been found had been taken up. And there was no signs of forced entry. The door was still locked. The windows were still locked. Needless to say, no one slept particularly well that night. And we will pick it up tomorrow on Thursday. That's a fun day. It was even fun to say. All right, I will see you then. Thank you for watching and/or listening. Bye.